Hello and welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. It is our 101st episode, Lou, and we're live.
And we are live, exactly. So if dogs bark or something like that, then we can't do anything out. We can't edit it out like usual. But I did bring a bottle of champagne for 100 episodes of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. Who would have thought that night we were at the bar and on the back of a napkin, we came up with the concept of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership over 2 years ago. In 100 consecutive weeks, we have not let our listeners and viewers down.
Yes, or we have pestered them consistently with a video or podcast every week to listen to. So,
and it is harder than one would imagine to produce a weekly podcast. I mean, you and I can get on and we can just talk for ad nauseum, but to actually pick the topics, do the research, and to see the way that we've evolved. Remember when we used to do it in your dining room? We used to have our little studio in the dining room, and we used to set the lights up, and we had the camera and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then COVID hit, and we found this wonderful venue of you and I being virtually together to be able to do it. They become a lot easier in that respect because there wasn't a lot of setup.
No, it's certainly simplified things. And I think my hairstyle has evolved dramatically for the better from those early episodes.
Yes, the man bun is gone. So that's a good thing. In fact, if you go back and I went back the other day, looking at, okay, we've been at this 100 times now for 100 weeks. And I took a look at some of the earlier ones, and some of our early concept was, okay, we're going to do a subject in 10 to 12 minutes because people's listening and attention was very low. And that's the way we did it. We was just rapid fire, you and I going back and forth. And now I look back and they're much more relaxed. We can joke, we banter back and forth. And the listening, believe it or not, hasn't gone down. It's gone up considerably. And I think if one of the benefits of COVID that we have is that people are listening to podcasts more. So it worked to our advantage. But to look at the early versions and then look at the current version, we have definitely evolved.
Yeah, I can just say I saw pictures the other day when my dog was just a little puppy who would come running around and biting our toes while we were trying to do the podcast. And now she's a full-grown old dog now.
Yeah, and she's got a partner in crime too that's full-grown.
She does. Yeah, she does. That dog is whining outside the door as we speak right now. So for anybody watching, drop comments. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we will see them and we will be able to reply to you. It might just tell us it's a Facebook user, but if you've approved StreamYard for your Facebook or YouTube, we'll be able to see your name. And we do have our first comment here from Jillian Spannon, who comments, "Nice shirt, Lou." And I cannot agree more. I am sure it has thrown off your computer and your camera to actually have to color balance instead of monochrome black Lou.
Well, I have to say, I ditched the 13-year black fashion that I had just for this episode. So this is my way of celebrating by being colorful because normally it's all black all the time. In fact, if you go to my closet at noon, you have to turn the light on in order to see all the clothing because it's just black shirts, black pants, black jackets. That's it.
Well, don't forget the pop of color in the...
Yes, I do maintain a pop of color with my handkerchief pocket square. Yes, I do maintain that. But the shirt, I mean, it's like the rainbow threw up on me because there's so many different colors.
I know. I'm sure it's quite shocking. People are probably adjusting their screen at home. So let's see. The people who wear this, so we have, I think, Albert Einstein. Didn't he wear all the same clothes all the time? So he didn't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum's character in The Fly.
Right. Mark Zuckerberg. He wears the same turtleneck or T-shirt, hoodie. I should say.
Is it a hoodie and a T-shirt?
No, that was in the movie Social Network. But now he just wears the same gray T-shirt all the time. And in addition to that, if you think about it from a time, it is time saving. There's no question about it. Because the only choices I have to make when I go on the road or in the morning when I wake up. It's black shirt, black pants, black socks usually. And my biggest decision is, should I wear loafers or tie-ups? That's really my fashion decision that I have to make every day. But if you think about it, when I go to the store, I just go to where all the black clothing is. So I save time there. My kids love it because my daughters, when it comes time for Father's Day or Christmas or my birthday, it's, what do we get, Dad? And it's a common theme. Just get it black. And if it says Purdue on it, it's a home run. So,
wow. Well, I just have to decide if I'm going to wear shorts with my blazer and if they're going to color coordinate, or if I just don't care.
Yeah.
It's been that way for over a year now. So
absolutely. It has been a wonderful time that we've done this. I'm looking forward to the next 100. We've stayed true to the entire concept from the very beginning, with breakthrough leadership. And I was going through just last week all of the different topics that we did, and the top 5 that we did, believe it or not, number 1 was employee engagement. And it is over double of what the number 2 subject is. And that is facilitating meetings. Happened to come in at number 2. What is agile leadership? Came in at 3. Critical thinking, hits home right to the heart there. Came in at number 4. And then tied for 5th was improving communications at work and how to manage underperforming employees. And our coming in at number 6 was and one of my good friends will be happy to know this, Joe Jordan, who was our guest back in March, where he came on and talked about his book, Sharpening Your Life. It is the interview that has received the most downloads. So, yeah. But we've had some good people on. I mean, when you think about it, we started with Darren Martin when we talked about company culture with his book, A Company of Owners, which, by the way, 3 weeks ago, came in at number 4 on the Wall Street Journal's list of best-selling management books.
Really?
And we had him on very, very early. So
did Darren send you a press release on that? Is that how you knew?
He posted it on his Facebook page, with a copy of the Wall Street Journal, and it was on there. So yes, he does a good job of, as he says, managing his scene when it comes to his social media profiles. But we've had some great folks who have been very enlightening. With a lot of the things that we've done. The one I think that really hit me the most was Tracy Miller, where we talked about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And that received a lot of comments and everything. And she just comes at it, down and dirty, no holes barred. And at the end of that, I seriously had to go back and apologize to both of my daughters for being a bad dad.
Well, who knows? I don't think you're a bad dad.
Yeah, no, but there's room for improvement. I'm sure that our one person who commented, Jillian, would be nodding her head right now, going, "Oh yeah, lots of room for improvement there."
Ooh, well, there you go. Well, no, I remember when we made the decision to tack on interviews, to start doing some interviews to kind of broaden the base, bring some other insights in, and of course the ongoing joke just to get people to validate our opinions. And we do a pretty good job. It seems like we're right more often than we're wrong, and I'm sure it has to do with all the research we do.
But
it's been fun to have that on. And we also had, I'm surprised it's not in our top 5 because it was for a while, was our remote work segment that we did in January of 2020, well before we all saw what was coming.
Absolutely.
And that one got a lot of activity as people were trying to figure out what to do in March and April and May of 2020. So it turned out, and that turned into a whole series of remote work pieces that we did. So
and it's funny because when I look at the stats, all of a sudden you'll see one episode out of the 100 that automatically just jumps up. And it's almost as if people are listening to us, Craig, at the end when we say, share this with other people. It's as if somebody listens to it and says, hey, I want my entire team to hear this. And then all of a sudden you'll see 12 to 30 downloads of one podcast on 1 or 2 days in a row.
Yeah. And that's exciting. And we're glad that we are adding value to what we're doing as people are out walking their dogs or driving to work or running on the treadmill.
Sure, because God knows we're not doing it for the money.
We're not getting paid for this.
Yeah.
No, I think it's funny because we were so intentional early on to make sure we did this by video, but
Right.
we've taken off so much more on the podcast form than we ever do on video.
Right. Yes.
So, but here we are live on video today. We can't go live on the podcast, but we will drop this recording into the podcast as well.
Absolutely.
On all your favorite podcasting platforms, as Lou likes to remind us.
And it looks like, according to our stats, that the Apple podcast is the #1 platform that most people download Q&A on breakthrough leadership. So, yeah, but no, it's been interesting. We have listeners around the world. And it's funny because I'll go onto the website and I can look at where people have downloaded, and it's got one of those maps of the world, and it says how many have come from Australia, China, Russia, Africa, South America. It's incredible. People are downloading it all over, and we are only one of 2 million podcasts that are available today.
That's right. That's something we learned as we were getting our next month of podcasts put together, which has really turned into a series on the Great Resignation.
Right. So with all of the choices, so with all of the choices that are out there, we appreciate all of the listeners and viewers to Q&A and Breakthrough Leadership for tuning in every week and downloading this podcast. So we know there's a lot of competition for information out there, and we hope that we have been a reliable source to your personal management and leadership development.
Yep. And honestly, folks, as Lou said earlier, it's a lot of work to come up with the topics and do the research. We would love to hear from you about what you would like us to talk about. That is, we want to make sure that we continue to be relevant and we continue to be helpful. So if there are topics or different cuts of those topics that you would like to have us talk about and do some research and get a guest on to talk about, please let us know in the comments. Shoot us an email. Our email addresses are at the end of all our videos. Shoot us the comments. We would love to hear more from you, or even drop us a note over on our LinkedIn page or our Facebook page or YouTube page.
Sure. So and if you know somebody that you think would be a good podcast interviewee, please shoot us their name and we will get in contact with them and have them on an episode.
And we will make you famous as we are.
Yes, I still have to wear sunglasses when I walk down the streets here in Indianapolis, because inevitably people will say, "Aren't you like the Q of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership?"
Wow.
But please, I'm eating. No autographs.
Yeah. I only do autographs for the kids.
Right. Yes, only for the kids. So sort of like when I put up my Halloween decorations, which are a little bit more ornate, people always go, "Wow, this is great." And I always say, I do it for the kids.
Nice. Yeah. We lucked out. Our neighbor's putting up a lot of decorations. So it takes us off the hook. It's great.
Yeah. So people won't know it. They're not yours.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Well, Lou, should we pivot into our topic today?
Absolutely, because this is a topic that you and I have been talking about now for about 2 weeks, and it's a topic that is really affecting both employers and employees, and that is the Great Resignation.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound effect on
that. I mean, if you Google the Great Resignation, it's amazing how many hits you're getting with words of warning, words of wisdom and advice for those employees who are going to be looking to move over to another job. And in fact, I was talking to a good friend just 2 days ago, and I mentioned the Great Resignation, and he looked at me like I had salad in between my teeth, and he didn't hear about it. And then all of a sudden, the next day, he texted me an article, and he said, "You wouldn't believe the first article that appeared in my news feed." And I said, "See, they're listening to us, John." They're listening to us. But we're doing this podcast live in celebration of our 101st podcast, over 2 years worth of work. And but you and I on Monday recorded 3 podcasts for being to release within the next month that all deal with the Great Resignation.
Yep.
So a lot of people who don't know, if you haven't heard about the Great Resignation, the Great Resignation is something that, as I said, is affecting employers and employees. And in fact, just recently in August, 4.3 million people left their jobs voluntarily, which means they weren't fired, they quit or resigned. And they left them in probably the largest number since 2002. So this is really becoming an historical movement within the workforce, and there are a lot of causes. And out of that, it's interesting because out of the entire workforce, out of everyone who has participated so far in the Great Resignation, just in August, 5.5% are women and 4.4% are men. So there is a distinction and a difference between the genders on who is taking part in this Great Resignation. And the largest generation, and I know I'm going to say this with a smile on my face because I know the thoughts, Craig, that are going through your mind, but the largest slice of the pie when it comes to generations are the millennials. Between the ages of 30 and 45, those are the individuals that are really taking part in this Great Resignation. And so it's not like the handwriting wasn't on the wall for companies, because we knew when it came to descriptions of the generations that millennials were looking for an organization or a job that was not just a paycheck, that it was meaningful, that it fulfilled their life. So gone are the days like at my age, where everyone joined a company and usually stayed for 15 or 20 years. We knew ahead of time, based on statistics, that millennials averaged in one job only 3 to 5 years. So the fact or the statistic that ages 35 or 25, no, I'm sorry, 30 to 45 are the ones that are taking part of this shouldn't be surprising.
Well, it's also interesting, right? Maybe, yeah, towards the end of the Obama administration, beginning of the Trump administration, there was that huge market that made it so easy. It was very market like today, lots of openings, lots of opportunities, and the millennials were able to pick and choose. If they were unhappy here, the ability to move to another job was super easy. And the thought then was, that's great. I'm very happy that people can do that right now. But when we get into a much different position where jobs are far more scarce, what's their reaction going to be? And sure enough, that started to happen. And then here they get 3 years later, another big opportunity to just bounce around the workforce. Right. It is such, setting COVID aside and all the tragedy that represents, what a huge opportunity for them to continue this pattern of behavior of, I don't like this, I don't like the colors of the walls, or I don't like the vision of the company, and I'm just going to pop over somewhere else. Yeah. And, again, I still wonder what's it going to be like, as we start to get into a shrinking market where there's fewer jobs available. Right. And we'll see what happens. But for now, yeah, it's great flexibility to be able to pop around like that.
Yeah, and don't underestimate. According to some of the articles that I've read, there's a professor down at Texas A&M. His name is Anthony Klotz, rather. Klotz. He's the one who has coined the term the Great Resignation, because he studies companies and why people leave companies. And he said that there were 4 reasons that he came up with, 4 primary reasons that people are currently participating in this Great Resignation. The first one is there was a backlog of people who didn't quit their job during the pandemic, but are doing so now. So during the pandemic, when it hit, obviously everyone was financially, I won't say insecure, but they had questions, doubts. There was a lot of stress that evolved around finances, and they stuck with their job. But as time went on, the second thing that happened was worker burnout. And it wasn't burnout just on the job, the way that Professor Klotz mentions it. It was just burnout from life also, because a lot of people, particularly young families, they had their children that were taking in shelter for school. And so they had to manage the home life and the work life at the same time. So it wasn't just that work was loading everybody up to make sure they stayed productive. It was really making that balance between the work life and the home life. When it all happened up under one roof that really caused a lot of that burnout. And it got people to really have what he refers to as pandemic epiphanies. And by that, people were introspective, not just individuals, but couples that sat down and said, is this really what we want for our lives? And he also has found out through the studies is that it's not just people are leaving an IT job and moving to another IT job, which, by the way, food service, retail, IT, and healthcare are the four major industries that are being affected right now by this Great Resignation. But a lot of people aren't moving to the same job in another company looking for, quote unquote, the old greener pastures. What some of them are doing is they're actually changing their careers and doing stuff that is meaningful to them. And then the last main point, the fourth one that he brings up, is that there's a fear that remote work will go away. And after 19 months, let's face it, for most people, 19 months, that's history, that's tradition. And a lot of companies are being, and I'll use it in a nice way, but they're being heavy-handed and saying, you're coming back no matter what, period, end of story, no more remote. And for people who have gotten used to that flexibility, being able to pick the kids up from school, drop them off to school in the morning so they didn't have to take the bus, take them to, soccer practice without having to rush from the office, going to wherever your child is, but to do it from the neighborhood where you are. In addition to that, don't forget that commute. We live here in Indianapolis, and a long commute here in Indianapolis is 20, 30 minutes. And that's in the height of, and I'll jokingly say, rush hour. And I say that jokingly only because I've lived in big cities like Atlanta and New York, where rush hour truly is rush hour, where there are millions of cars that are on the roadways. But if you think about some of those people in those large cities who they want a big house, so they move outside of the city and they have to make an hour to a 90-minute one-way commute to the office, all of that time is being rededicated to the family and to their jobs. So there is the time saving, there's the cost savings. I think, I jokingly, but it really wasn't that much of a joke, where during the pandemic, the 2020 lockdown, that I was getting 2 months to a gallon of gas because I wasn't going anywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there's lots of savings if you think about it.
Yeah, but I think the other thing to think about is something you said in all that, setting aside Dr. Klotz's work, is food service, retail, IT, and healthcare.
Right.
Let's keep in mind the big ones that everybody's feeling every day is food service and retail.
Right.
Food service and retail were shut down during the pandemic. A lot of those people found jobs that weren't shut down during the pandemic and found I could get a more stable wage, put up with less guff from customers. And oh, by the way, I can suddenly get healthcare.
Right.
So you've got a huge chunk of this that really has nothing to do with flexible work arrangements. It's I can go work for Amazon and make 15 or 20 bucks an hour and get healthcare, even if I'm only working 30 hours a week. Or I can go back to that restaurant and hope I get a big tip, get some drunk spitting on me, or get some Karen yelling at me at the counter at the retail store.
Because she's not wearing a mask.
Yeah. Or I can go do this. Yeah. So, the question on that is, where's that really going through? It's so interesting now. Tacking on IT and healthcare. Now that's a slightly different beast, right? Yeah, These are healthcare is a job. It's kind of hard to do remote, although aspects of it are able to be done remotely.
Yeah.
IT is certainly something you can do remote, probably in many cases quite easily.
So a lot of companies depend on remote IT offices when they outsource or, overseas. So
yeah.
Remote. Yeah.
So I can certainly see it in IT and maybe aspects of healthcare. Healthcare seems like it's more of a burnout from what I've read. But we kind of talk about the Great Resignation like it's this huge swath of white collar workers in office jobs who are now just abandoning my job in financial services, or I'm abandoning my dreams of architecture. I don't know that that's really the case. We have this very focused area that seems to have most of the impact of it. And then we're kind of extrapolating it out to other things. Financial services is doing very well. Telecommunications is doing very well. Now, some of those may be doing remote work. We've seen, we've talked before about Goldman and Chase making their "you're all coming back" and then kind of backing away from that a bit.
Right.
But I don't think they're going to back away from it forever. We are very much at this one end of the pendulum, and I think on the remote work piece, and we're going to start to see that that's not a perfect situation. And
Right.
I was actually debating this with somebody on Twitter the other day that, engagement's going to be a struggle if everybody's remote. I don't know. And, you'll see in one of our interviews that we have coming up that, not a lot of companies are like 5 days a week remote. I think we learned from John Rosser, there's more of a discussion around flexible work, that I may be in a couple days a week and I can be out a couple days a week.
Yeah.
So I think, like many things, I think in America, we want to go, look, it's over here. And isn't everything awesome? Yeah. It's going to come back, probably swing back this way at some point too, right?
Yeah.
Once the labor market tightens up dramatically, the companies are going to be back in control. Right now, the companies aren't in control. The companies have a loss of control because it's very easy and very fluid to bounce around right now.
Right. Well, economists are currently saying it's going to be a long time before we get out of this great resignation. And in addition to that, until the women start rejoining the workforce, and from the earlier statistic, they are leaving more often than men are leaving. Until they get that foothold back into the employment ranks, you're going to find that you're going to have situations where economists are saying that the economy may not get back on solid footing until those people rejoin. And then Microsoft did a study of 20,000 people globally and found that 41% of global, and so we're expanding that reach a little bit, globally have plans to leave their job within the next 12 months. So it's not just America. It is something that is being felt throughout the entire world.
Yeah. And we will see. We will see how long it takes to get back, right? I mean, we're all working here to build back better. So we'll see if that actually happens, or if we're really going to see some of these prevailing problems continue, right? There's, I'm quite sure if we see inflation continue at the rate it seems to be going, a lot of these people are going to have their hands forced to get back to work, even if right now they're trying not to. As schools open up, we now have a vaccine that perhaps will be released soon if it hasn't already. I don't think it has been yet for children, which should open up schools more. So we may see that moving back more quickly than we might otherwise. So we're just going to have to see. But at the end of the day, the pocketbook's the pocketbook, right?
Right. Yep.
There's going to be some stressors put on that from everything we can see.
Right. And that, let's go into another subject, that if people are truly considering about leaving their job, I'll toss it to you first. What are some of the things that you've seen people are recommending that individuals should do if they are considering leaving their job?
Well, I think one of the things we definitely heard in one of the interviews coming up is, don't just leave. Make sure you have a plan. And, depending on your salary that you're at today and where you want to be, the higher the salary, the longer it's going to take to find that next role.
Right.
So, think about what it is you want to do. And it's all well and good to say, I'm going to leave my job of being an IT, whatever, and I'm going to go be a whatever, I don't know,
a gardener.
I'm going to pursue my dreams of being whatever. What trade-offs are you making financially if you're going to do that, right? If you're making $70,000 a year and you're moving into something you're going to make 40, have you thought through what that really ultimately means for you and what the longer term prospects are?
Right.
So being aware that these replacements take time, and not to just walk out of your role and then search. The big one is think about where you want to go, do the work. As I think the quote was, it's a full-time job almost to look for a job.
Yeah.
So if you're in the process of looking for that job, make sure you're taking the time. It's going to be a lot of your nights and weekends to do it while you keep doing your current job.
Yeah.
And that's the big one.
Right. And some recruiters have a I won't say a general rule of thumb, but in their advice is they say for every $10,000 you're looking for in your current salary in another job, $10,000 equals 1 month of looking. So now that's in normal conditions. As we all know, this is an employee market. It's not an employer market. I mean, you see, want ads, and people are out there because employers can't find enough people to get in there. So I think some of the articles that I read, and there was something good that I read and I found quite helpful. And that is, if you're considering leaving, the first thing you should really do is you need to ask yourself, are there other options within the company that perhaps I can consider? Such as, can I move to another team or to a department that maybe does something similar to what I'm doing, or is completely different, but your tenure in the company may get you recognized, and also your networking within the company may give you an opportunity or an in to move from finance to marketing. And to do that, one of my big clients in Peoria, I do annual training for them for a training program for their marketing group. And many times in the marketing group, I will have people who have already had, 8 to 10 years of experience with this company, and they are moving into the marketing area. And so check and see if there's opportunity to do that. That was something that I thought was good. And the other thing too, I read in one article, is talk to your boss about maybe restructuring your job responsibilities and looking at it to see if there are some other responsibilities within the team, within the company, that might be more friendlier to you, or may attract your attention and get you to truly want to dive into something with a lot of enthusiasm. See if there's a way you can restructure your position with the company before you actually pick up and leave. So figure out what's working, and also figure out what's not working before you make that decision to do that.
Yeah. I think, trying to find that other opportunity within your current employer certainly solves a lot of problems. If you've got a 401k, you don't have to worry about that, right? Everything starts staying much more smooth. Sometimes it's even, can I work in a different location? I know people who, they have a good job, they're good at their job, they like the company, they don't like where they are. Right. So can they move to a different division, or move, to another place in the country where the company has a presence or a footprint? So that's also some ways, if you're looking for some change, but you still like to have security, are those some of the opportunities that you have as well?
Yeah, because the old adage, and I think we brought it up on a few podcasts, is that people don't leave their job, they leave because of a bad manager. And I think during this Great Resignation, we're seeing that is not holding as true. It's not just the bad manager, it's an introspective of how am I doing? And is this really meeting my needs? Because again, remember, large significant portion of this population are those millennials who are not there for just the paycheck, and the benefits. They're there to get fulfillment out of their job. And so I believe that companies need to start looking at it a little bit different. It's not just your leadership. It may be the actual business model. And I know that I believe we mentioned it with Maury Schwartz in an upcoming podcast, where a lot of companies are still trying to put that proverbial square peg into the round hole with the old business model. And that square peg being, in this analogy, the employee, the new employee, the next generation of leaders. And they're not fitting in that old business model. So companies may really need to look at their business models more than just flexible work. So let follow that up then, Craig. Let me ask you, if I'm a company, what do I need to do to prepare for this Great Resignation?
Well, one, it's, I think we had this in a viewer mail a couple of weeks ago, where they were kind of, well, hey, we're thinking we need to make some changes about this Great Resignation coming up. Like, hey, if you're just now thinking about what you got to do to change your culture because of the Great Resignation, you might be a little late on that. But
a little late to the party.
I think, though, the big ones are trying to, there's this old model of you show up, you go to work, you leave, and you work hard, maybe you work extra hours or whatever it is. And that's fine. But as you said, a lot of the millennials and the Gen Z are looking for something with a little more meaning, or at least aligning themselves with the mission of the company. And that doesn't mean every company has to have, you want to be very clear on what your mission is. I don't think your mission has to be some big philanthropic endeavor to attract these employees, but I do think they want to understand how your company is driving change in their industry, in their market, in the world, whatever it might be.
In the community, period. Yeah.
So can you get really clear? As a matter of fact, I just did my weekly live training a little earlier today about the importance of defining a clear vision for your company, because when you do that, your employees can align with that mission.
Right.
And that's going to create more stickiness, that drives to more engagement, that gets them to want to stay there because now they're aligned with their values and they understand what their role is in helping the company achieve the vision.
Right.
So that's a very important piece in trying to get your employees to stick around because now they align with that.
Right.
You know, I think the doors open a little bit on exactly what this remote work looks like. Is it 100% remote? And, you know, by the way, let's not make the assumption that every single employee wants remote work and flexibility. There's a whole lot of people who want that. I go to work, I come home, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, the downside to all this is we're all sitting around at 10 o'clock at night, knocking out email, right? So let's think through, you know, not every employee wants to do that. But think about what those flexible work arrangements are. Is it, you know, are you going to have certain days? You have to have a consistent policy of how you're going to do it to avoid a lot of this finger pointing stuff about fairness, right?
Yeah.
That's a big piece. I think you have to have a good, solid policy on when you're doing it and when you're not doing it. And by the way, leaders, you darn well better follow it too, or you're going to have a whole lot of problems with the staff. It applies to everybody or applies to nobody. Right. So that's a big piece. The other thing I think too that we haven't talked as much about is, you know, for your people who are not leaving during the Great Resignation, make sure you're paying attention to them. Make sure you're building those people up. Continue to invest in the people who want to be with the company, who have found that way to identify with the mission. Don't get so flustered by the people are leaving that one of the things we've seen is, you know, the remainder. If there's the Great Resignation, there's the Great Remainder, right? And if the Great Remainder is just getting everything piled on them, guess who's going to be the next one to go?
Yeah, or just will add to the mass exodus of the Great Resignation and increase those numbers. Yeah.
So make sure that you're considering that and just don't take for granted the fact, oh yeah, old Jane, old Bob is going to stick around forever.
Right.
And we can just, you know, pile on. Probably not the case because they have options too. They're just choosing to stay with you. So honor that.
Right.
I don't know what else you'd add, Lou.
Yeah. Well, the one thing is if I'm a company now, I would definitely, if it weren't, and we've learned a new term, essential work, where you had to be there in person, your company needs to offer flexible work time. There's no question about that. The other thing too is take a look at benefits. You may not be able to afford more salary, but what can you do in the way of benefits that when someone is considering either staying with the company or moving and taking a job into your company, how are your benefits different from everybody else? You know, we normally think of, unfortunately, in America, health insurance is tied to a job. And we know lots of people who stay in their job just because of their health insurance, which is a ridiculous reason to live your life doing something you don't like to do, only because you get good health benefits or because you can't get affordable health care anywhere else. But the other thing too is a lot of companies are doing interesting things, like they're offering tuition, which is very advantageous to a lot of people who want to get that second degree or even that first degree or that associate degree, and paying for books to help them to be able to go through that. There are a lot of different things aside from the monetary benefits that a company can be doing. The other thing too is companies need to do a better job selling themselves. What differentiates them from other opportunities that may be in the workplace? And it's got to, as if we've learned anything, it's got to be more than we give a good salary. There are other things. It's not a toxic work environment, which, by the way, John Gruden isn't part of this mass resignation, is he?
We'll go ahead and count it.
But you need to, what kind of workplace? What's the culture, Craig, as you said before? Do you have a good diversity and equity and inclusion, program in your company? You've got to look around. You've got to take a look to see that that's gelling. And then the other thing too is companies, if they're experiencing an outflow of employees, is utilize resources like executive development firms that can take and save you a lot of time and stress trying to find the right people to come in and replace those people who are leaving. So these are just a few things, I believe, Craig, that companies, they can't ignore it anymore. They've got to start thinking about it. No matter what kind of company you are, these are some things that you need to do.
Without a doubt. I think one of the things that people are really looking for is my company investing in me?
Right.
And it's a little tricky because at the same time, we all worry about the fact that people are much more transferable in their jobs and they're willing to move on.
Right.
but making that investment is going to help you retain employees. It's going to lift up better employees for you. Do you run the risk that they may move on? Yeah, but take some pride in the fact that you've enabled them to be at a higher position somewhere else, because sometimes the opportunities don't exist in your company at the pace that they want to move.
Right.
So
and what's that old saying when it comes to learning and development? I'd rather have people in their jobs who are efficient and proficient at what they do because I've developed them, as opposed to having a bunch of people that I didn't invest in doing a mediocre job and trying to push them to do a great job. So yeah. So investing in training and development or learning and development is important also. And through COVID, we've found that it can be done very economically through webcasts and things like that, as opposed to hiring somebody to come in and sit with your people for 8 hours and paying expenses and all that. It can be done very easy and flexible. There's that word flexible again. So when we're talking about flexible, we're not only talking about that remote work. There's a lot of flexible things that can be done to make sure that you are not monopolizing your employees' time, but you're giving them time to do their actual job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good. What other things do we need to touch on here?
No, I just say we'll give everyone an advance preview. We will be interviewing 3 individuals in the next 3 weeks, and it's not a series, but it would be what did we referred to it in our green room discussion? Chapters. On the Great Resignation and looking at it from different perspectives. And so with Maury Schwartz and John Rosser and also Simon Cardinal, which Simon, by the way, is our first international interviewee. So we've reached across to our friends in the North. And
to the Great White North.
To the Great White North. Yeah, hey, Hoosier. Yeah. And the funny thing about it was I was looking at that. I went through that recording because I jokingly said, I'm going to keep track of how many times you said A. And he didn't say A once. So I think that might be a little bit of a misnomer that Canadians say A all the time, because he went about 45 minutes and didn't say an A.
Well, maybe we need to tack on some Canadian research into our DEI program here at Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership, so we can be clear. And I would say, Lou, what we tried to do with those interviews is to give you different perspectives on the Great Resignation and what's going on. So with Maury, we're really looking, Maury is a career coach, helping people who want to make a transition into a new career or new job. So we want to get that perspective. John is an executive recruiter talking to both candidates and employers. So we have a unique perspective from him on what they're looking for. Simon's real expertise over on his Trench Leadership podcast is around emerging leaders. And so we talked about as we talked a lot today about millennials and that next generation of leadership, what does that mean for them as well? So we're really trying to give you some different, unique perspectives as opposed to just kind of our overview. Today, we really wanted to kind of get you prepared, give you kind of the framework of it. And then we're going to give you some different shades of it. So that's what we're really trying to do with the interviews, aside from just confirming all our opinions are right, is to get that in there. So please make sure.
You always get that in. You always get that in.
I think it's important, and it turns out it's mostly true. But make sure you like, share, and subscribe to any and all of our platforms. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You could check us out on QAleadership.com. And as Lou says, we are also on all your favorite podcasting platforms, which appears to be mostly Apple, as it turns out. But we're there for you. And you can check us out there and make sure you subscribe, because this is a great series or chapters that we have coming up for you.
Right. And I will save this bottle of champagne for your birthday party, your 55th. On Friday night. So happy birthday in advance, and we'll open up a bottle of champagne. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, nice try. So
you know what I noticed here, Lou? What? There's a lot more gray in this episode than in episode 1.
Yeah, it's same with me. I've been noticing the gray also. And
that's what, it's the stubble definitely has a whiter sheen, Lou.
Exactly. So anyway, we hope you've enjoyed today's live podcast of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. And again, please like, share, and subscribe, as Craig said, and look forward to the next 3 episodes that we'll be doing that all deal with different perspectives of the Great Resignation. So until next time, keep your hands washed, keep your distance. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson. Thanks for joining us live today, everybody.